Hello and welcome to Living As Is. I'm Shar, autistic, self-aware and awake. Today I'm bringing something to you which is slightly different from what I've been doing. I'm going to discuss tarot readings. Yep, that's tarot readings. And the reason for this, I'm going to be coming back to doing tarot readings for people, and I'll advertise it as soon as I'm back. I may even do another video, but for now, I just wanted to give a bit of an explanation about how I do tarot and the cards I use. So let's start with the cards I use. Now, I want to give you an example of some cards, because these cards are quite different in their designs, which means that these cards can be viewed differently. If a person chooses, these cards can be viewed differently. So let's start with the King of Swords. See, now I use a deck which is called the Osho deck, and this is the King of Swords in the Osho deck. And as you can see, it says control at the bottom. Now, when you look at this card, you could easily mistake it for absolute control, because all the edges, all the sides are just perfectly honed. And I'd also forgive you for thinking this was absolute control. But then, here we have the King of Swords from a totally different deck. And this king is sitting on the edge of his seat. He's ready to defend, he's ready to jump up, he's ready to protect. You could view it as an individual who's ready to protect and control the person they care for. But then we go to a third deck, and we have this King of Swords. But again, it's control. And so we've got three different kings here, represented in three different ways, I should say. So all of them have the same meaning. It's the King of Swords, the King of the mind, which is control. So effectively, they're all saying the same thing, but because you look at them and the perspective you may gain from looking at them, you might view them in slightly different ways. Now, another card that people really like to see is the Lovers. So I'm going to do this slightly differently. So this image is a bit erotic, and you've got these two lovers in the waters bathing together, starlight shining down on them. It's a perfect romance story, perfect image. And this is the Lovers card. Now we also have, from another deck, this Lovers card. And the hair is designed like the feathers of lover birds. So the imagery may change slightly, but it's still the Lovers card. And then from the Osho deck, we have another image. So all these decks are representing the lovers, but they're representing them in very different ways. The Osho deck tends to reach inside you. The Osho deck tends to turn things on you, and has you looking at, what do you think love is? What do you think the perspective of this is? Why did you ask that question? The Osho deck could easily do that to you. And like with this Lovers deck, the heads of the two lovers has been turned into the shape of a heart. So this is, for me, shows where the Osho deck turns you inward towards yourself. Whereas this deck is taking you outside yourself. So they're representing their decks in different ways, but it doesn't necessarily mean they'll be different. However, they can be read very differently. And that's where I have a tendency towards using two decks, because I've got one deck which is given principal understanding from Osho, from Buddhism, from Zen Buddhism, from looking inward. And then I have another deck which is looking at life in a more wider perspective and a much more wider way. So now, why readings? Well, when I do a reading, I only have a few things that I ask when I do a reading. Now, some people have a habit to do something that I sometimes find difficult to get them to stop. So, let's say a question is asked about the lovers. And it could be a question I've been asked many times. Does he love me? So the lovers comes up, and the person may be thinking, oh, that's fantastic. I thought it would be that way because I thought this and I thought that, and because he said this to me and I said that to him. And I'm sitting there listening to the person, and I'm saying to them, stop. And the person's, yeah, well, I thought that, and then eventually they'll say, sorry, what did you say? I'm saying stop talking. Please stop talking. You came to the reader for a reading. You didn't come to tell the reader the answer. You came for an answer. So give the reader the chance to actually talk. But you see, this is a problem, because what I've found with some people is they can't help themselves. So whilst you might stop them talking on one subject, they're only going to start and talk on another subject. So you have to be in control of the conversation all the time as a reader. Unless, of course, you're a reader who doesn't mind giving someone a little bit of an answer, lets them talk, gives them another little bit of an answer, lets them talk. And so what you're doing basically is you're cheating a little bit. You're letting them give you all the answers because they're just talking all the time about everything. That does happen, but I'm not that reader. I would rather you listen than talk. And if I need any questions answered, I'll ask them. I think that's a good way of doing a reading. So the other thing is that sometimes cards can be misunderstood. Now, I don't know if I'll be able to find this card. I have a card in the Osho deck that is about patience. It's about waiting. It's about taking your time. It's not about pregnancy. And the reason I mention that is because in the image I'm looking for, there's a woman sitting, heavily pregnant. Moving over the top, she has the cycles of the moon. And she has water flowing around her. So there's a balance to what you see in the image. Here we are. Here's the card. So here we have the card of patience. And there's the cycles of the moon, the water flowing underneath, and the pregnant lady sitting in the centre. This is about having patience and waiting. You wait for everything to happen. Now, in your other standard deck, this would be the Six of Pentacles, and I believe have got the image right. It's a woman standing underneath a tree with 6 pentacles in the tree, and she's waiting to pick them. So that's waiting about ripeness and about the right time. This is the same card. It's about ripeness and the right time. One day, this card came out, and I do what I sometimes do with my cards. I argue with them. I'm an intuitive reader. So I could see a card come out and sit there thinking, no, you don't work. You've got nothing to do with this person sitting in front of me. I don't know why you've come. And I'm arguing in my head. I don't argue out loud. I'd sound nuts. I argue in my head. So this card comes out, and I'm tapping this card, and in my head I'm saying no, no, no. And then eventually I thought, okay, I've got no choice. I have to say it. So I tap the card and I look at the person in front of me and I say, you're pregnant. And they say to me, you're an idiot. Because for me to be pregnant, I'd have to have a partner. And I don't have one of those. So no, I'm not pregnant. I said, okay. Well, I'll tell you what. We'll put this card to one side for now, but I'm not going to take it away. And then I carried on with the reading. Now, a year later, I'm at the same festival, and a lady sits in front of me. I said, hello, how can I help you? And she says, I saw you a year ago. Okay, I'm sorry, I don't remember. I see quite a few people. And she said, no, it's okay. I saw you and you told me I was pregnant. And I'm looking at her and there's no bump. She's obviously not pregnant. And I'm like, I did. And she's like, yes, you did. I said, okay. And she said, I told you were an idiot. I'm like, okay. And she said, because I wasn't. Right, well, I'm sorry about this, but I don't understand why you're back. She said, well, I told you were an idiot. And then after the reading, I decided I would go and talk to a doctor. Just to kind of get a checkup. And I discovered I was 3 weeks pregnant. I'm like, oh, okay. Congratulations. Let me finish. That's where I'm going to finish the story, because that's that lady's story. All I wanted to pass on to you was that this card, in over 20 years of doing readings, never once meant pregnancy. It only ever meant patience. Until it didn't. Because my intuition told me the person in front of me was pregnant. And they were. I'm not saying it happens that way all the time. What I am saying is that I argue with my cards. I will swap my cards with other cards. I've even been known to clear a deck out the way, shuffle again, and start all over again. Because if my intuitions are not in alignment with what's coming out in front of me, I'm going to argue with my cards. My cards offer me a doorway. They offer me an idea. They offer me guidance. They do not control the reading. So I tune into my deck. I tune into the person sitting opposite me. And I see what we can do together. Because that's what a reading is about. It's about the together of everybody that's present. And so a reading with me, I won't be looking at using spreads. I hardly ever use a spread. And let me explain that one to you. Now, my Osho book, I should say book. I've had the book in the deck for a long time. So in the back of this book, it shows you a spread. There's a spread, the Celtic cross. Here's another spread called the mirror. Using a spread, for me, interferes with my intuition, because every card has a position. Now, what I will do, what I do like is in the middle of this deck, you've got this number 1 card, number 2 card. The number 1 card is placed face down, and that's the issue, or what could be possibly the issue or the problem of what's going on. And then the card placed over the top leads us to it. So I like that. I like that unseen card. So I may use that unseen card as a surprise to see what happens. So if I'm shuffling a deck and a card jumps out, I'll place it to one side. And the reason for placing it to one side is because that card could change the entire reading. In just turning it over could cancel out everything I say. That's how much power that one card can have. And the reason I say that is because I respect cards that jump out of decks. People can look at this as hocus pocus. They can look at it as complete, I don't know, balls. And they can say, this is rubbish. I've just been doing this for too long. And I've just been using these cards for too long. And I use my intuition. The one thing I won't do is lean towards spreads. And the reason for this is it's too easy to place a card in a particular spot and take that spot as this card means that. Really easy to do that. Same with this spread. Placing the cards out. This card means that. This card means that. Really easy to do that. So I tend not to use spreads because I want the cards to talk freely. I want my intuition to talk freely. I want you to talk freely. And when I say talk freely, I don't mean talk to me. Obviously, you're going to need to talk to me to answer certain questions, to point certain things out to me. But what you're not supposed to do is to talk endlessly and tell me all the answers. That's not what we're here for. So I tend not to use spreads because that's too easy. And once a card is labelled and named, sometimes it's hard to change it. But also, I've found when I've used spreads that the labelling gets in the way. So I prefer not to use it. I tend not to use it. But that doesn't mean it won't work for other readers. I'm just saying it doesn't work necessarily for myself. So I tend to work in a free-form way. And I will lay the cards out and I will show you the cards and I'll tell you as I go along what I'm picking up. Because another thing that's really important is the positioning of the cards. So in this deck, I've got 4 cards here. 4 cards I can talk about. 3 cards. Yeah, 3 cards. I'll do 3 cards. So we have this Patience card. We have this King of the Mind card. And we have the Lovers card. So a question comes up. Does he love me? And the Lovers card comes out. And everybody's jumping for joy. It's the Lovers card. It's the Lovers card. Taking that card on its own doesn't mean anything to me. Because taking that card on its own is just the Lovers card. It could just be the Lovers card, unless it's upside down. And then we've got a slight problem. If ever my deck goes upside down, we have a problem. Because I don't use my deck upside down. I don't use my deck upside down because I kind of feel my deck will tell me if something isn't right. So there are readers who use their decks and when a card comes upside down, they take the reverse of the card. So if we've got the Lovers card the right way up, we have an open relationship, a balanced relationship that we can work with. And if there are issues, we might be able to work through them. If the card's upside down, we've got a problem within the relationship. Within this card, there's a problem, and so things are highlighted incorrectly upside down. I tend not to use them upside down. I prefer my deck to tell me. But if you ever have a reading off me and a card comes out upside down, we have a problem. but most of the time they're upright. So card on its own, you can take or leave it. Now say we have the Patience next to it. And what we've got here is we've got this relationship, and maybe it's a young relationship, and what it needs is a bit of patience, a bit of time, a bit of motion is needed, because this is a young relationship, so we need to give it a bit of time. That's a good card of patience. We might have the King of the Mind come up. King of the Mind, a controller, a bit fastidious, might be a bit narcissist. Might be a bit narcissistic. God, don't you love it? Some words just won't come out. King of Control could be a bit narcissistic. There we are, got it in the end. So if we've got this Lovers card we're looking at, and we've got this Have Patience card, but then out comes the King of the Mind and Control. We could have, yes, you need to take time. You need to think about things, because it could be the person, one of the people in this relationship is trying to be a bit controlling. And because they're trying to be a bit controlling, you've got to have patience to work your way through this. Is this going to work at all? So those three cards can paint an interesting picture. But say we don't have that King of Control, but what we have is the Two of Cups. Now, the Two of Cups is a card of friendliness. It's a card of openness. It's a card of togetherness. It's a lovely card. Now, if that card came with these two cards, oh, we're on our way to a good relationship, because the card of friendliness bonds together and grows together. So having patience, everything grows in its time, everything becomes. So we had the Two of Cups and the Lovers card and patience. Great. So you need to bear in mind what cards are next to what cards and where are they in the relationship. If we use like a 5-pointed star, and we've got a card at each of the 5 points, everything is interacting. So that means all of the cards are taking energy from all the other cards. That's a powerful spread to use if that spread's used. You can have a spread which is called the key. And it's called the key because the shape of it is in a key. And as you go through the key, you get the key to unlock your answer. So spreads can be very useful, but I tend to use my own, which come to me as I'm doing a reading. So there we have tarot readings. So I'll be advertising when I'm doing my readings, and I may put another video up, as I mentioned. But for now, thank you. Thank you for taking the time to listen. Thank you for taking the time to be present. And come on. Click below. Click the link below. Click like, click subscribe, and click the notify. Be really daring. Click the notify so you're notified when the next video comes out. Thank you for now, and blessings to you all. Thank you very much.